I'm Bonnie McEwen with the Northwest District Office, and it's my pleasure to introduce this session, this first breakout session called So, How'd It Go? Which is a question I think we'll be asking ourselves and you throughout the day, and we'll certainly be asking it of ourselves after the conference is over. Before we get to the material, just a few housekeeping details. We would love for you to use the chat space today for any questions you have for Sam. We're tapping down the use of microphones just to make it a bit easier all around. So the chat space, I will monitor and make sure that Sam sees your questions if she doesn't see them before I do. You do have a chance to turn on closed captioning. If that's a good thing for you, you'll find that button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And whenever the ILOC conference is over for you today, I know that we go into the evening with an evening program that starts at 6 o'clock. But if you can't be here for the entire day, maybe this will be your last session that you can attend. Please fill out the conference evaluation when the conference is over for you, and I will pop that link into the chat space at the end of our hour. So with that, this is So, How'd It Go? Evaluation and the Project Management Lifestyle. Life cycle. It could also be a
Could be a life
lifestyle, I
cycle
suppose.
too.
Life cycle. We'll
All
hear
right.
how evaluation presents itself through various stages of a project. It's all about having a project management caboodle, which Sam is here to explain. Samantha Bauer scarcely needs an introduction, but I'll offer one anyway, since that's my job today. You know her as the continuing education consultant for the State Library. She is your best contact person with questions about continuing ed, obviously the endorsement program, and one of her favorite pieces of software, Workday Learning. She loves everything about Workday Learning, as do we all. So Sam is here to tell us all about a project management caboodle.
It's true. Thanks, Bon. Okay, so this is the time to tell you that if you were in my ILA session that was about project management, this is going to be largely a repeat. So now would be your time to scoot off to one of the other breakouts unless you are just dying to hear more about caboodles. The other thing, to just go ahead and say, we're going to talk about what caboodles are, but I do in fact have a bunch of object lesson props sitting down at a table next to me that I can't show you, but I will do my best to hold up as we go through today. So so great to have you with us, and I hope you enjoy this session. I hope you enjoy ILOC all around. And as Bon says, you can always feel free to reach out to me with any questions about whatever related to continuing ed. So there's my contact information. If you want to get a hold of me, feel free to shoot me an email, text, call. I will do my best to respond timely. Okay, so you don't get to sit through a session from the CE consultant without hearing what the learning objectives are. So what do I hope that you'll be able to do after we wrap up here today? We are in this session till a little after 11:30, so we're going to make the most out of it. But I hope that by the time we're done here today, you can list the phases of the project life cycle. We're going to talk about some really practical and applied ideas you can take back to your library this week and start utilizing as you think about projects in your library. And then, of course, in the spirit of talking about evaluation, we're going to look at some different ways as we think about the projects that we have going on in our library, the different ways that we use evaluation tools to both get ready to do those projects and how we think about how they went at the end. So we've got a few different places when we think about a project where we need to think about the concept of evaluation and assessment. So we're gonna focus in on those things. So how we're gonna accomplish those learning objectives, we're gonna really define what a project is and why you need to manage it. We're going to, as we go through each step of the project, we are going to have some different tools that you can think about applying in your library. And then we'll sort of think about, all right, how then? So we've defined what it is, we've thought about how we might do it, and then we're going to sort of begin to make a little bit better plan. Okay, but first, I don't know, is there a raise hand option? There might be. I'm get a little bit confused. Who's heard of a caboodle? Where's my participants list? Oh, I've got about half a dozen raised hands. 15. Okay, so here's a definition that the internet site Reddit offers for caboodle. A tackle box marketed to teenage girls, mostly used by anyone who needed to store little things in an easy to carry place. So I get a little bit, I mean, I like tools and toolboxes as much as the next 30 something year old woman, but I get a little bit sick of all the sort of tool and tackle analogies. So I did in fact assemble a caboodle. Can you see it? So this is a lovely caboodle. It's stuffed full of things that we're going to use to manage projects as we go through today. And so I just was like, it could be a project management toolkit. Uh, but just for the sake of making all you 90s kids happy with me, it's a project management caboodle. And indeed, I did fill it full of all my object lessons last night and carry it straight into the office this morning. And I only had one weird look on my walk from the parking lot in. So I think we should normalize carrying caboodles around. Quick note, I am 90% sure that I had the exact one in this picture somewhere at my mom's house, and I cannot find it. So this peach one you see here is not my color of choice, but it's what I could do on short caboodle notice. I gotta go ransack my mom and dad's attic to try and find my original one back. Okay, so when we talk about a project, what exactly do we mean? And of course, this session is called Evaluation and the Project Management Life Cycle. I do like the idea of the project management lifestyle as Bonnie introduced it. And and but we'll talk about a cycle instead of a style. If you want to stop being a project manager at some point, you sure can. Take that hat off. Don't make it a lifestyle. Shout out to Lindsay's hot pink and purple caboodle. I hope you find a picture of it. This whole slide deck is full of caboodle pictures. So if you're just here for the caboodle pictures, you're also welcome. All right, so a project, as defined by the Project Management Institute, is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create unique products, services, or results. We got a typo on that slide. I better fix that. So Bonnie, I'm going to pick on you, and indeed, I'm going to pick on everyone in the chat here. When you think about a library, what kinds of projects do you think about? You're gonna have to unmute. And you can drop in the chat maybe a recent project that you've worked on if you've got one, or something that you've got coming up. You can drop that in the chat if you're listening in. Bonnie?
I was going to say programming, and because we do so much advanced prep for summer reading, I think that tends to be an annual expectation for that to be a project.
Yeah, absolutely. Orange City and Sue both point out a couple ones that I thought of, which would be like a facilities related project. We hope that those are sort of temporary. Summer reading's another great example. Kathy says finished a physical remodel, probably needed this a few months ago. Well, Kathy, good news. You're gonna still have building problems. So this attendance is not for naught. Outreach visits, programming, yes, these are all really great examples. Some other ones that I thought of might be board education. So if you've got a sort of, you want to tackle a plan to get your board more better educated on a few topics, you may start to think about how would you design and program for that. A staff in-service could be another example. Reporting on strategic planning, yes, developing a strategic plan would be another really a great example. Yep, doing an inventory. I want to take a minute to talk just a little bit about this idea of temporary. So theoretically, when we think about a program as defined by the official Project Management Institute people, they do want this event to have a start and a stop, as in, like, I'm hosting summer reading from June 1 to July 20. That's what we're focusing in on here. And at that point, then that project is done. But when you think about something like story time, you're doing story time all year long. And at that point, it's not temporary. I I like to sort of build some benchmarks into the things that I do that are ongoing to say, okay, we have a we have a CE team here at the state library. Bonnie's on it, as are a handful of other state library staffers. We usually take a time out in the summer, which is a slower season for us, while you all are busy doing your summer reading program. We tend to be a little quieter. And so we take a sort of time out there to say, okay, in this coming year, what did we like? What did we not like? What do we want to do? What do we want to not do? So we sort of use that summer retreat time as a way to say, we're chunking this big project into the next year. And it doesn't really stop, but it does give us a nice place to sort of tap the brakes and do a little bit of thinking about how it went. The other thing that I like about this definition is it doesn't say anything about the size of a project. So it can be big or small, but you can incorporate these tools into whatever size project you have going on. All right. And so then project management, again, I'm struggling with my slides, is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques the application of these things to project activities to meet requirements, practice of planning, organizing, executing the tasks needed to turn a brilliant idea into a tangible product, service, or deliverable. So raise your hand if that sounds like something you do in the library. Does that sound like a skill that you apply? For sure. You're coordinating staff and volunteers to get stuff done. You're working with the board. You're working with other partners around town. With you're working with city councils and other nonprofit boards. So for sure, these skills are definitely something that you already do, I would expect. And so we're going to talk about how to maybe do them a little more efficiently. All right, which brings me to our first learning objective: list the life cycle of a project. So we have six sort of stages here. And again, this is the Project Management Institute, or PMI, that sort of defines these: feasibility, design, building, testing, deploying, and closing. And so since we're talking specifically about evaluation today, I highlighted in bold here the pieces where I feel like we really want to focus in on applying some evaluation and assessment ideas. Of course, in the feasibility part of the project, we want to understand what would it take to get this done. What exactly is it that we're trying to get done? So we're defining goals. We're beginning to understand if those goals are even wanted. If this sounds like strategic planning, it's a little bit, there is definitely some overlap there. In the design stage, you're beginning to take some of those feasibility studies and sort of map them out. Okay, if our goal is a weeded adult fiction section, what kinds of reports do I need to be pulling? What kinds of staff time do I need to be dedicating? Are there going to be overlapping things like shifting the collection after we weed, or maybe removing some shelves, adding shelves? Sort of kind of thinking through all those different pieces to accomplish that end goal. Then we're going to sort of actually begin to build the plan. We're going to be in touch with stakeholders more. We're going to start actually thinking it through. Then we're going to test. Maybe we weed just the, authors A through D at first, and we see, is it taking the amount of time we expect it to take? Are the reports what we actually need? Are our patrons very confused? Did we have all the right plans in place as far as disposal of materials? Working with the Friends group to pay us for book sale items, etc. So we're going to do a little test. Then we're going to actually do the whole project. That's when we deploy. In that testing phase, this is also where you can probably begin to see some overlap with evaluation. So if we end up doing a little bit of testing and figuring out, oh, this isn't going the way we want it to, we may need to return a little bit into the feasibility and evaluation stage to just say, that report didn't give us the information we needed, or it wasn't formatted the way that would have been the most helpful. So how can we change that up to better address our goals? Deploy, then we're going to finish the project. We're going to read E through Z. We're going to finish it out. And then close is also another place where it's really important to incorporate some assessment and evaluation ideas. So maybe getting together with the staff and volunteers that worked on the project to say, did you have the tools you needed? What would be better when we move this to nonfiction or youth staff? So we're touching base with all our stakeholders to say, did this work the way we wanted it to? All right, so let's go through each of these phases. This is where I'm going to highlight some of the tools I was talking about that I have found really helpful as I've managed projects in the different library settings that I've been in. And this is also where I get to start digging through my caboodle. So for a feasibility study, I sort of like to think of it like a vision board. What exactly is it that we are trying to accomplish? And the questions that we tend to ask are, can we do it? And should we do it? And I apologize, I could not find I have a printed out vision board. So for this one, I did not dig through the caboodle, but you did see it on the slide there. So that can we question. We're looking at everything here from budget. Do we have the money to get this done this fiscal year, or is it something that we need to look out into a different fiscal year to accomplish? Maybe looking into grant funding or something like this. But we do need to think about the money. We also need to think about the staff budget time. So if you think we're going to do this project, it's going to take a certain amount of staff time, what are you going to tell staff to not do? I used to serve on the board of a nonprofit, and it was about a 5-hour-a-week commitment. One of the questions that I would ask new board members coming on was to say, I have a feeling you're not sitting around your house at night with nothing to do. And this is going to take about 5 hours a week. So can you give me a sense of what you are not going to do for 5 hours a week when you will be helping our board, helping our organization? And maybe that is less television. Maybe it is, oh, I'm coming off the board of this other place, so I'll have time. But you want to be specific about the amount of time it's going to take, so you don't burn out your staff. Every project you say yes to means potentially saying no to something else. This is also where we're going to look at things like networking with other libraries to say, okay, you did that recently. There's a library talk post going around right now on converting a children's section to genre-based instead of author-based, or using the BISAC classification. And so this is a great place to go looking through those library talk posts to see, okay, about how much time is this going to take? How have other similar organizations tackled this problem in the past? And then also, so that's kind of the can we question. And then there's also a question we ask, which is should we? So are our patrons, or is our staff actually interested in this? Is this something that they would like? So if we're talking about genreifying the fiction collection, have we heard from patrons that it's hard to find the books they want to find? I'd really rather just go to all the Tractor books rather than dig through to try and find poor Otis, who hides under whatever author he's written by. Otis the Tractor, anybody? All right, he's great. But we may want to do some formal and informal assessment of our staff and patrons for a project like that. Similarly with summer reading, this is a project we've talked about throughout the morning here, to say, what did we like about last summer? What do we think might work different this summer? We didn't have people come when we hosted programs in this place. Maybe we want to look at changing that up a little bit. but this is going to be sort of the qualitative side of that should we question. On the quantitative side, we may want to compare data from library to library. So to say, our collection is large relative to other libraries our size. What does that mean? Does it mean it's time to weed? Does it mean we just have a fabulous collection and the space to hold it? We're talking about building projects. Do we need to begin to think about square footage of our library versus other similar libraries? So can we and should we is sort of helps with that assess piece of our conference theme, assess, adapt, act. Here's one example of a feasibility study that we did at ILA this year. We want the CE team, we have our new trauma-informed library practices endorsements, and we think we can probably handle putting out another endorsement that people might be interested in on a particular topic area. So first we ask the question, can we? Do we have the staff time and energy and expertise to take on an additional endorsement? We met as a team to talk about the in-house expertise that we have and the technology that it would take to get that done. And we sort of came to the conclusion, yes, we can continue to offer additional tracks of the endorsement program. And then we sort of turned to that should we question. Should we offer an additional endorsement? So we set this up at ILA where we had people cast a pom-pom for a vote. Should we offer an additional endorsement on tech services, cataloging, collection maintenance, etc.? Should we offer an additional endorsement on local history, digitization, sort of that type of skill? Or should we think about an additional endorsement on community engagement and outreach? And that was number 3. So that was our winner, which sort of showed that the people at the conference thought that was a good idea. And so now we sort of continue to ask that should we question by talking with librarians who practice in this field of librarianship to see what they think would be relevant and helpful for others coming in to specialize in that. And we might continue to do interviews and focus groups to just begin to answer that question. So feasibility, can we and should we? All right, so then we start design. And so for my design, I'd like to pull out of my caboodle some beads. We're gonna start stringing beads. We got some pony beads. We got to start designing what exactly is this gonna look like. This is also where I like to point out with project management, and I think Anne from Bloomfield set me up for success here when she asked about chocolate, because project management is not an Oreo. Project management has important stuff in the middle too. Or maybe it is an Oreo. It's like an Oreo. You don't want to forget about the middle parts, which is what I mean by this design phase. So rather than just saying, yep, we can and we should, and we're going to run, in the design phase here, we really want to take some time to make a plan. So we get to see when we've done the design phase, when we're doing a little bit more conscious planning, we get to see where some gaps in our evaluation and assessment might have been. We may think of additional questions we want to go back and answer. So this page, you're identifying stakeholders. So if we are talking about summer reading, it's good to sit down and make a list of everyone that we may want to identify as a stakeholder as summer reading. In-town daycares that might want to participate in program, businesses that may want to sponsor or partner in some way, parks where you may hold programming, your staff, your board, your city. These are all going to be people that to one extent or another need to know what's going on with your summer reading planning. I'm going to show a screenshot of the next item, which you may have seen if you've been in other presentations that I've done lately. But the magic to do is kind of a fun way to think about the fun AI-driven tool to introduce some design ideas. I'll show you a screenshot of it in just a second here. We may want to start to set up a Kanban board, or a task list is basically a fancy word for that. I'm going to show you also an example of timeline tracking in Google Sheets. And then I find that a calendar, especially when you're a small staff, a calendar can be really effective way to keep yourself on track with big or small projects to say, okay, I've got the library to myself from 9:30 until 10 when we open the doors. I'm going to schedule a meeting with myself to start thinking about that performer we want to book. So on the calendar, I've got a meeting that says, call the performer, email the performer, whatever it is. But we're keeping these projects moving through the power of the calendar. So as promised, a screenshot of Magic To Do. This is a tool from a suite of tools called Goblin Tools. If you're at the Learning Circuit, you might have played with it a little bit last fall. But basically, you can put your big project in up here at the top. And then you can specify how intimidating you find that project. So you set the number of chili peppers. So if you have done 100 board presentations to the County Board of Supervisors and you know what you're doing, you just sort of want a sort of big picture idea, set it to 1 chili pepper. It's going to say, make the slide deck, schedule the meeting. But if you find this process really intimidating, you can set it to additional chili peppers, and then it will start to make a really detailed action list for you. Now, this may not be exactly right. It is driven by AI. AI doesn't know that much about your library. It does know some about boards of supervisors, but basically just a way to start thinking through as you're in this design phase of all the tasks that you might need to get done. And it will even, if you click this little magic wand, estimate for you how much time it thinks that's going to take. Sometimes it's kind of right and sometimes it's kind of wrong. So you'll have to learn through trial and error, but it's kind of a fun way to get just an idea in this design phase of what tasks you might be facing in this project. I mentioned tracking through like an Excel sheet or a Google Sheet. This is actually a sample conference timeline for ILOC, I believe. And we have a team of about 5 of us that meets regularly sort of throughout the summer and fall to get this conference ready to go for you. This is not super fancy. Digital works well for us because we are all over the state. But basically anyone on our team can head to this Excel sheet, see what tasks are coming up, see if any of them are assigned to them. We also then tie that Excel sheet into regular meetings. So I keep a Google Doc, again, because we're all scattered all over the place, of our meeting notes. All of our meeting notes go into one Google Doc. That way I don't have to try to keep track of, did we decide that at the July meeting or the August meeting? But really I can just scroll through that whole notes doc. It links out to our planning timeline. It's all kind of tied right there. It's not very fancy. Ambry and Laura have just brought up one online tool called Basecamp. I have used Basecamp for different projects before, not here at the state library, but my theory on things like Trello or Asana or Basecamp is that they're really only as good as you can get your partners to participate with you. So if you've got a really tech savvy group that are all used to operating with tools like that, yes, they can be helpful. Or if maybe you are committed to saying, oh, I met with Cindy and she said she got that done, and then you go in and check it off. They're not bad, but really you have to do whatever works for you and your team. And if what works for your team is something that's more analog or as simple as a Google Doc, then that's what's really going to be helpful. Okay, so our next phase to talk about is build. And of course, for build, I have here a beautiful scrunchie. My hair is sadly too short for scrunchies now, but I dream of the day when I can wear this one again. But basically, we want to construct a quality deliverable. We want to put on a great program. Because we have done our research, we have done the feasibility study, we have decided we can do it, we have decided we should do it, we have started to think about how to design it, and now we actually start to put the pieces together. So again, there are some sort of AI computer generated tools here that I think are extremely helpful, particularly for me, who is not any sort of graphic person. Grab your slides from somewhere like Canva. You could type in, summer reading presentation, and you're going to get some really great summer themed slides that you can take straight to Kiwanis to ask for their partnership. You'll get some really fun templates that you can plunk the iRead graphics right down into. So take advantage of tools like that as you're beginning to build publicity or promotion. Unsplash is another great place where I grab tons of pictures from. They're all free. Um, as far as text goes, ChatGPT is another great one to just say, again, policies pending. If your city or your county has a policy on how to use generative AI tools, respect that, of course. But to even just say, write me a letter requesting donations for my summer reading program this year. It's going to be able to do something like that in 10 seconds. You edit it, you send it out. I want to show you an example of my how I do inboxing. And the real power of an inbox comes through understanding what the next action is. For me too, when I think about getting things done, I have digital and analog methods for that. So of course, people send me emails, they go into an inbox, and I process what's there. But I also keep a paper calendar. So on the left, first thing I do when I come in the morning is write any meetings I have that day. And then as I go through the week, the page on the right fills up with notes. So whatever action items I have, get a little box to check off. Once it's done, I cross it off in yellow because yellow is the best color. Fight me. Even though you can barely read it, if it's in yellow, it must be happier. Different colors of text mean different projects that I might have ongoing. Youth services happens to be red. You'll notice here, I always like to point out my handwriting is not fancy. This is not beautiful, but it really does work for me. The other thing I think about when I think about a tool like this is that you will very seldom see a task in any of my inboxes that is something like plan ILOC. It's never that big. If you have really done the design and build phases correctly, by the time you get here, if you've done the feasibility and the design phase as well, by the time you get to build, you're really going to understand what is a manageable piece that I need to get done here. And so you'll be able to be more productive when you think about these big projects in terms of their next action. I want to call out that a couple of people in the chat have mentioned they find ChatGPT to be helpful. I'm glad to hear it. Bonnie also mentions a tool called Live Binders, which is another great way, digital way to keep a group of people on track. I was thinking about ChatGPT. Okay, so here's a little break. I've been talking too much. What do you think? If you could take one project management task, as you think about these things that we have been doing as part of our project management skills, drop into the chat. What project management skill would you most task? What project management task do you most want to stop doing? Nicole chimes in right away with number 4, chasing people for status updates. Holly says schedules. Sue says risk management. I know Sue just basically built a library, so I imagine she's well familiar with risks right now. Chasing people for status updates. Yes. And so, so I found this from a survey of professional project managers, and they all agree that chasing people for status updates, or they largely agree, chasing people for status updates is kind of the the most annoying part of this. And so even if we're a small shop or a one-person shop, we still have different stakeholders and people that are helping us, community partners, board members, other volunteers. And we do need them to get stuff done. Um, but hopefully, if we've got these more manageable chunks, they're able to get things done in a timely manner. And we don't have to bug them so much. Bonnie, what do you think? I need another drink. When you think about project management-y things, what's your what's your least favorite task?
Oh gosh, I
Put you on the
I
spot too much here.
oh, I don't know.
Mhm.
I love them all.
Oh, you're like Orange City says that too.
Oh, really? Lisa,
Yes.
you feel the same way? I love them all. I think I just want to put in a um a round of applause, if I may, for our own Samantha Bowers, who did an absolutely outstanding project management job in helping us transition, all of us at the State Library and all of you in the listening audience, transition to Workday Learning. You want to talk about a project to manage. Sam did it with such grace and such good humor. So that's what I think of when I think of this topic.
I feel like we're not to the end of that one yet, so I'm not ready to to give myself any pats on the
There's
back.
still more to come.
Well, hopefully not too much. Okay, so I'm going to roll on to thank you all for the claps. That's very nice. I'm going to roll on to the next stage because we're kind of running out of time here. But so we have now sort of built our ideas. We took our time out to talk about what we find annoying, but now we're back in the life cycle of a project. So the next stage is to test. Is it doing what you want it to do? This one's kind of a hard one. Oh, and so for this one, I have a mirror. I pulled a little mirror out of my caboodle. There's a mirror built into my caboodle. That's a classy caboodle. But it's hard to lift up. This is a hard one to think about when we think about something like summer reading, for example. It's not like you can really do a week of summer reading and then put the brakes on. Maybe you could think of a way to make it happen. But you may want to roll out. Oh, one example might be, okay, if we do this program in the summer, we're going to have 300 people there. Could I do this program once during the school year and sort of see how it goes? And then I'm ready to roll it out in the summer. Ambry mentions testing things for summer during spring break. Yes. But there could be other little ways that you might just want to say, I'm thinking of doing this. I've done some research, I've done some legwork, but now we're going to test. So when I think about testing, I kind of like an A/B test. What I mean by that is we're going to do it one way, we're going to do it a different way, and we're going to see which way we like better. Um, so, for example, we want to rearrange the children's area. I can't decide if we should have the art table in this corner or that corner. I'm going to try it a week over there. I'm going to try it a week over there. Oh, when it was in spot A, there were crayons perpetually rolling up to the desk, and people were tripping on crayons. Not a great spot for the art table. So you've learned something. Um, we are also at this point going to do some regular checking in with the people who are working on the project with us. Again, is that report giving you the information you need? Are we staying on the budget that we thought we would stay on, whether that's a financial budget or a time budget? We want some quick and easy ways for stakeholders to give feedback. I'm going to show you an example of that. And again, project outcome is a tool that we're going to talk about a lot today. Here is, oh, and also we have assess, adapt, act. This is really our adapt part when we think about evaluation in our library. One example I want to point out here from the CE team is that when we changed from, if you've been around the state library world for a long time, we used to have the public library management 1 and 2. And we changed that to be our endorsement program. And part of that was a technology self-assessment. We thought we meet a lot of new folks in libraries that are unprepared for how much technology they're going to encounter working in the library. So we developed a little assessment. We said, you should be able to do these things. And we made you take a test when you enrolled in the endorsement program. And at some point in the last year, we looked at the results of all of those assessments that you all had taken. And we thought, this assessment is not really doing the thing we want it to do. How can we change that up? So we're in the process of sort of adapting our ultimate goal of having people be more well technology equipped to work in the public library. Here's another fun sort of passive feedback option that we did at the learning circuit this year. So we had a before and after and a yes and a no. I feel comfortable using AI tools in my library. Before the presentation, you can see most of the dots are kind of down here towards the middle and the bottom of this sheet. We did the presentation and we had the learning circuit, and at this point, many more of the dots are starting to move up towards the yes side of things. So a way to sort of say, did we do the thing that we wanted to do? If we were to do more of this in the future, would it work similarly? And it would. Okay, as we deploy, I'm going to pull out of my caboodle some makeup brushes. We're getting ready for the final touches here. When we think about deploying, we've done a bunch of work. It is one absolute key to this is to communicate it. We send out newsletters, we send out regular emails and status updates. There are many tools you can look at online for keeping people informed about what you're up to. This goes beyond summer reading. You redid the kids area? Include it in your next newsletter, sort of brag about the work that you've done. You've cleaned up the adult fiction section, let people know about it. We want people to be engaged in the projects that we're doing so that they can have buy-in as well. Even our community members are stakeholders here. Also, it's important that your staff all have a rough idea of what is going on. For example, one thing I do every ILOC is make sure that the reference desk staff over at the law library knows what's happening today. Inevitably, there could be a librarian that ends up calling the reference desk, and the reference people who normally have nothing to do with continuing education are all of a sudden forced to answer a question that they might not know the answer to. So making sure that all your staff is reasonably informed about what happened and why it happened. You don't want your poor evening clerk to be getting an earful from somebody about why you rearranged the kids area when that person didn't think it should be done and your poor evening staffer had no idea that it even happened. So making sure that staff are all well informed. And then the last piece, of course, this is where a lot of our another big part of evaluation and assessment comes in, and that's to close it out. I have some stick-on earrings here. The best finishing touch for any outfit, a really solid pair of sparkly stick-on earrings. But you guys have answered this question for me 100 times on your CE evaluations. Start, stop, keep. That to me is the key of any project evaluation. If we were to do a project similar to this one again, what should we start doing? What needed to be done that wasn't done? What should we stop doing? Did we really waste too much time on running those reports when we could have dived in? Did we really need to be waiting for status updates on all those other people? Whatever the case might be, that we might want to stop doing, and what would you do again? What should we keep doing? One example, and I know we're kind of running out of time here, but I wanted to show one example of how I save documentation, which is that I mentioned we have these Google Drive folders. We keep everything related to the conference in that networked place where everyone can access it. At the end of the event, I sort of download those to a more permanent location, at least the final versions of things, so we have them finalized. And then I put a note in our Google Drive where those are. The other thing is that when we do our staff evaluation of a project, or our stakeholder evaluation of a project, if this is something that's going to be done next year, I saved the notes from that debrief meeting in a folder for the next year. So after we did ILOC 2024, I created an ILOC 2025 folder. And when the staff sat down last year to talk about what worked and what didn't work, those notes became the basis of how we started planning for 2025. So we try to keep all of that documentation kind of rolling together. This is also the point where we might have to stop and answer some hard questions. Did we stay on budget? Did it burn out our staff in some ways? If we do this again, how do we keep our staff safe and well? But we need to keep them. We need to make sure we're answering those hard questions, even if it didn't go the way we expected to. If we had a goal of 15 people coming to this program and we didn't meet that goal, it's time to think about, okay, were there different ways we could have promoted? Was there a different time of day we could have had that program? And so, like Erica said in our keynote this morning, your plan doesn't have to be a cudgel, but it is important to sort of evaluate those goals and those metrics about was it a bad goal? Was it a bad metric? How do we define this differently in the future? Okay, I have a couple other things I want to say, which is that you're going to make mistakes. This is why we build in so many different points where we evaluate and test. You're going to make mistakes. So there's an eraser in my caboodle. If you get to a certain point of the project and you think, this is just straight up not working, guess what? That's why you're not up to your eyeballs in it yet. You have relatively little invested at this point to just pull the plug and say, we're not doing this right now. The other thing I want to say is that appearances do matter. I've got some nail polish in here. Look at this fun green color. If I get bored this afternoon, I'll start painting my nails. So appearances matter. You don't just want to send out emails willy-nilly. You want to have them well thought out. You want to have a signature line. You want to have a place where people can go for more information. And again, this is also why we test. So if we get to a certain point and we aren't able to communicate something solidly, we may need to go back and rework. I already pointed out my Oreos. Don't get over focused on the middle section. I think we think, I'm going to go straight to deploy. I have an idea. I'm going to deploy it. But you've just missed the cream. You've just missed the best parts of it, which is the part where we are going to set ourselves up for success. The other piece, and I think Sue kind of mentions this in the chat as well. The last thing I'm going to pull out of my caboodle here is a diary. It actually says embedding evaluation on it, which is kind of fun. I must have gotten to that ripple. But take care of yourself is what I mean by that. Sue says it's hard to force yourself to get organized and do the project management process, but the payoff is obvious. I have to force myself to take a step back, take a breath, and work the process. And I couldn't have said it better myself, Sue. So thank you for typing that up. But it is hard work, and it is annoying to chase people down for status updates and schedule meetings and send 1,000 emails. But at the end, you're going to have a much better product that is going to have many more stakeholders bought into it. So take care of yourself. It's hard work. Step back when you need to, but you're going to begin to see the rewards. Okay, I think, Bonnie, I might have 1 minute for questions. How embarrassing.
Well, I don't know that I've seen questions come through really, but some really good comments from people about how much they enjoyed this. Lisa said it's given her some vocabulary surrounding project management that she says is very useful. And I like what Ambry said about she uses just a simple color-coded list for summer reading programs.
Yes.
And takes note of program suggestions from patrons and what the kids were excited about. I think that's a caboodle item within itself, right? Are colored coded dots.
Yes, I do a lot with colors when I think about my inbox. So what project does this apply to? I also think there's a role in project management to sort of have a hopes and dreams file. So if you get a note from a patron that says, Oh man, wouldn't it be great next summer if we could throw that in a place that you're going to keep track of it, and then when you start thinking about summer, you've got that file that you can go back to as well. Um, I want to just read this comment from Jensen. Two-person library gets stressful. So many projects, it feels like there's never enough time.
Mhm.
Spreadsheet, multiple sticky notes, digital ones too, a daily planner. I think that's right. And I think where you're really going to be successful in a small person library, small staff library, is to be thinking about how to break those actions down into really small steps. If you've gotten to the point where you're thinking that I will never be able to get this done, there's probably a smaller next action that you haven't considered. And having those bite-sized next actions also is great when you've got a quiet 15 minutes at the desk. What can I get done? I've got my inbox ready to go here. Is there something I can tackle in the next 15 minutes? Setting the board agenda, pulling that piece of data that I need for the annual report, whatever it is, you've sort of got that checklist ready to go. Well, thank you, everyone. I'll stop my share.
Thank you, Sam, so much for this session. So how did it go? I love your title. And thanks to all of you for joining us. I just put the conference survey link in the chat. So again, when ILOC is over for you today, if this happens to be the last session you can attend, or maybe you can stay with us for the entire day and into the evening, do fill out the survey evaluation when it makes sense for you to do so. And we hope we'll see you in the other breakout sessions coming up. Plus, we have an afternoon keynote. And don't forget the evening keynote that's especially designed and intended for library boards.
Yes, we'll have our keynote at noon where we're going to talk more about those quantitative data pieces. I'm so excited about it. Nerd. Okay, thanks everyone. We'll see